The courtroom smelled of old wood and broken promises. Sarah Morrison sat at the defendant's table, her clothes worn thin, her hair tangled and gray before its time. She'd been living under the 5th Street Bridge for 8 months, and today she faced charges of trespassing, public intoxication, and resisting arrest. Her public defender, a tired-looking man named Martinez, had already told her to plead guilty and accept the 30 days. "It'll give you shelter," he'd said, as if jail was mercy. Judge William Hartfield entered the chamber, and everyone rose. He was 63, silver-haired, with eyes that had witnessed thousands of cases, thousands of lives reduced to docket numbers. He settled into his seat and began reading the charges in the monotone voice of a man who stopped believing the system could save anyone. Sarah stared at her hands, at the dirt embedded under her fingernails, at the tremor she couldn't control anymore. "How does the defendant plead?" Judge Hartfield asked, still not looking up from his papers. Martinez stood. "Your Honor, we request a moment to confer with Sarah Elizabeth Morrison." Sarah interrupted, her voice hoarse but clear. She stood, swaying slightly, but her spine straightened with muscle memory from another life. Petty Officer First Class, United States Navy, Service Number 47289653. The courtroom went still. Judge Hartfield's head snapped up, his eyes locking onto hers for the first time. Something flickered across his face: recognition, disbelief, then something deeper. His hand trembled as he set down his gavel. "Did you say Morrison?" His voice had changed entirely, stripped of judicial distance. "Sarah Morrison, SEAL Team 3. Sarah nodded, tears forming in her eyes. She hadn't spoken those words aloud in 3 years, not since the night everything fell apart. "Yes, sir." Judge Hartfield stood abruptly, and then, to the shock of everyone present, he placed his hand over his heart in salute. Bailiffs, attorneys, spectators all stared in confusion. But Sarah understood. She saw it in his eyes, in the way his jaw clenched with emotion. She'd seen that look before, in the faces of men who'd been carried off battlefields, who'd been given second chances they never thought they'd get. "Master Sergeant William Hartfield, Marine Corps, retired," he said quietly. "Ramadi, 2006. You pulled me out of a building that was about to collapse. You and your team carried 3 of us through enemy fire. I wondered every day for 18 years if I'd ever get the chance to thank you." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Sarah's legs buckled and she gripped the table. She remembered Ramadi, remembered the smoke and screaming, remembered the Marine with the wounded leg she'd thrown over her shoulder. But she'd buried those memories deep, along with everything else from before the descent began. Judge Hartfield cleared his throat, composing himself, but his eyes remained fixed on Sarah. "This court will take a 15-minute recess. Bailiff, please ensure Ms. Morrison has water. Martinez, my chambers now." When court resumed, Judge Hartfield looked like a different man. "After reviewing the circumstances of this case and consulting with counsel, I'm dismissing all charges. Furthermore, this court is ordering an immediate evaluation for veteran services and mental health support." He paused, his voice softening. "Ms. Morrison, what happened? How did you end up here?" Sarah's story spilled out in fragments. The missions that never left her mind. The IED that killed her best friend. The diagnosis: severe PTSD, traumatic brain injury that came too late. The VA appointments she missed because dates and times slipped through her damaged memory like water. The marriage that crumbled, job she couldn't hold, the rent she couldn't pay. The bottles that made the nightmares stop, until they made everything stop. The bridge that became home because, at least under there, no one expected her to be whole. "I tried," she whispered. "I tried to be the person I was before, but that person died in the desert, and I don't know how to be anyone else." Judge Hartfield stepped down from the bench. Something unprecedented. Something that would later be debated by legal scholars. He stood before Sarah, this woman who'd once been invincible, and spoke with the authority of someone who'd walked through similar darkness. "You saved my life. Let me help save yours." He turned to the courtroom. "I'm calling in every favor I have. I want the VA here today. I want housing coordinators, trauma counselors, veteran advocates. I want her medical records reviewed by specialists, not bureaucrats. This is a debt of honor, and I will not let this system fail her again." 6 months later, Sarah Morrison stood in a small apartment with actual furniture, her hands steady, her eyes clear. She'd spent 90 days in a specialized PTSD program, started medication that actually worked, and connected with other female veterans who understood. Judge Hartfield visited monthly, bringing groceries and refusing to let her give up. She wasn't fixed. She'd learned that broken things don't always return to their original shape. But she was healing, rebuilding herself into someone new, someone who carried both warrior and wounds with equal dignity. On Veterans Day, Sarah stood beside Judge Hartfield at a ceremony honoring service members. When they called her name, she walked forward, no longer invisible, no longer forgotten. The crowd stood in silence, not of judgment, but of respect. And for the first time since Ramadi, Sarah Morrison felt like she'd finally come home.